Consumers want to know the facts about the products they buy, but America's agricultural landscape is not easy to navigate. Between different companies, scientific advancement, government regulations, advertisement campaigns, and an unhealthy amount of myth and misconception, anyone would be hard-pressed to make sense of it. That's where Real Ag comes in, from the producers who make your food, to the store where you buy the final product, and everything in between. This is Real Ag. Now, here's your host, Kyle Bauer.
Technology in agriculture has greatly changed the way a producer can manage their crops, reducing fertilizer input, soil sampling, aerial imagery, and taking advantage of custom combines, tractors, and sprayers are just a few ways of maintaining a more efficient modern-day farm. We'll find out more about precision agriculture on this edition of Real Ag.
Production of Real Ag is made possible by
the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by farmers.
For those who may not understand all that's involved in agriculture, how is technology used in different aspects of the industry?
And what we deal with here as a John Deere dealership, the two main things that we use technology for, the broad categories anyway, are in automation and in record keeping. We have technology on the machines that allow us to automate more and more of the functions, whether that be auto track with steering being taken over and controlled by the machine, or whether that be section control, turning off rows on a planter or sections on a planter or fertilizer applicator, as well as adjusting header height or down pressure or anything like that. That is more and more of that is being done by the machine and the computers within it.
There's so many different aspects to technology in agriculture right now. There's things popping up every year. We specifically focus on the drone aspect of everything, and it's not necessarily the drone itself that really makes us do what we're doing. It's the data that the drone produces that allows us to go out and fly these things on a daily basis. Obviously, we're not just flying drones over farms just for the fun of it. We're actually out there producing actionable data, actionable results to where a producer can actually take those results and make an informed decision off of those results. There's other different types of precision technology out there. We're focused mainly on the drone aspect and the sensing aspect of precision agriculture.
How has technology in agriculture changed in the past 20 years?
It's changed a lot. I think a lot of people look at technology in agriculture as a place where it doesn't have a place. We've seen technology adopt faster in agriculture than many of what would be considered the innovative spaces. Self-driving tractors. The first self-driving vehicle in the world was a tractor, not a car. And most people think it's a car or it's a plane. Nope, it was a tractor to help our farmers become more productive and more efficient. So technology has come a long way. We look at our fields very different, not only in Wisconsin, but here in Kansas. We're taking satellite imagery and we're coming down and looking at it from a UAV, and then we're getting right down on the ground and taking a picture of a leaf, and a true measurement is being made. As opposed to 20 years in the past where we're having to take an expert's opinion or send a tissue sample into a laboratory where it's being analyzed for weeks on end before we get information back. So the speed that we can get information back, the value of that data, and the amount of data that we can capture now has accelerated at an unbelievable rate.
All of this has come into place basically in the last 20 years. It was roughly 20 to 21 years ago when John Deere would have put a yield monitoring system in the combine initially, and most of that was just instantaneous yield. It wasn't even common at that time to have a yield map at the end of a field to look at and to use for record keeping. So we've gone all the way from that to now, up to the point of not only the auto track and the section control, but now we have multiple machines communicating to each other in real time where producers can see not only where they have planted, but they can see their second tractor that's in the same field and where it has been, and use their location even for their own section control, or even in their own guidance, making sure that they don't have overlap between the two machines. So we've covered an incredible distance just in that time, from going to where something was basically just an instantaneous yield number to where we're record keeping between multiple machines that are connected via basically a satellite modem to the internet. With most of our machines, starting in probably 2008 or so, more and more of it coming from the factory with the ability to steer, meaning that it has valves and controllers on the machine itself that are then controlled by a computer, a field-based computer, and a GPS receiver for location and speed that a producer would put in his tractor and then would be able to take over the steering functions and like I said, section control, as well as adjusting down pressure or any other, any function that they would have been doing manually, adjusting their hydraulics or speed or any of those functions.
Things are definitely moving towards autonomy in a lot of ways. We're trying to keep the human element in with all of this, so the reports that we produce definitely keep the human element involved, with the technology as it progresses.
Our business came about in 2009. Over the last 10 or 20 years, I would say technology has evolved farming hands down. It's a transition similar to going from a horse-drawn plow to a tractor. In my business, from a soil sampling standpoint, we've gone from collecting one soil sample per field per 160 acres, and that one soil sample that's no larger than a pop can, reflecting the fertility of 160 acres, to now soil sampling down to the acre, one soil sample per acre. Most common is a 2.5 acre grid sample, and then we're able to take that information, that soil fertility, and put that back into the tractor so that farmer can site-specifically place his inputs exactly where they're needed. The neat thing about how all of this works together is what Sam and Bill are doing with their drone technology. Is we see such a correlation to the nutrient analysis below ground to the crop vigor above ground. They go hand in hand. So it's really enabled us to make a lot more precise decisions and become a lot more efficient with our inputs.
Does the consumer benefit as well?
I think that, anytime that we're increasing efficiency for the producer, it is going to have some benefit for the consumer. You would think of, as you go to the grocery store, maybe it isn't a direct one-to-one correlation. If he can produce a bushel of corn 10 cents cheaper, do your cornflakes cost 10 cents less? You're not going to have that direct correlation, but anytime there's efficiency in the system, it is going to be a benefit to the consumer. And maybe even a more direct is if you see the corn that goes to ethanol and how much cheaper, if you go to a gas station that sometimes will advertise that their fuel has no ethanol, it's more expensive. So you do see some cost savings there for the consumer.
The consumer is going to see plenty of that benefit, mainly due to the fact that we're growing healthier crops. We're growing crops that from protein standpoint, we've got higher protein in some of our wheat due to fertility. The end user is definitely going to benefit from this as well.
Are there environmental benefits to using technology in agriculture?
We definitely can reduce inputs drastically by utilizing this technology. And because we're reducing inputs, that's less chemical we're putting out on our fields and that are getting down into our water systems and things like that, getting into our river systems. So it's definitely beneficial for the environment, hands down.
The section control is certainly where that shines. Limiting your double application within a field, largely because of irregularly shaped fields, not putting twice the fertilizer in a location or not putting seed where it doesn't need to be, that really is saving on that waste of input, which will directly have less getting into the environment that we don't want, being able to limit that.
Has technology increased the level of management needed by producers?
We've got to get out of the mindset of this is how I've always done it. Technology, there's so much technology in the cab of the tractor, in the sprayer, in the applicator, that a lot of times isn't being used to its fullest potential, and a lot of times I think it's because of a fear factor. Sometimes the technology, the advancement in technology, it can be a scary thing. Change is scary. So that's something that we've had to deal with. So definitely the level of involvement with the producer has escalated undoubtedly on the farm.
With all technology, there's a learning curve. So what we try to do at our company is sift through the noise. We're capturing lots of data from these systems, and there's a lot of noise that we're giving a farmer if we give him raw data. So if we're just giving him raw information, we could be giving him Excel documents that have, the pixel values and the color values. He does not necessarily care about that. He's wondering what the decision is off of that data. So what we do is we use a concept called data visualization. Taking a map and making it legible or readable by a farmer, that's 90% of what we do today. Because capturing the data is not that hard. Getting that data in an interpreted manner where a farmer can flip through it in 30 seconds and say, yeah, I need to go look at these 3 spots in my field, and those 3 spots are performing lower or higher than normal. We don't care about just the small, portions of the field that may be not performing, but we also care, why are they performing effectively or why are they performing good? Is it a particular hybrid choice that we made on a particular soil type? Is it a particular management decision we made on plant nutrition or on applying fungicide? So we're saying, from our information, flip to the last page where it's the note section, where it says your alfalfa field has 26% loss. It's a misseeding issue. You lost out on $1,500 worth of seed coming out of the ground. Let's make a decision to either reseed this or not. And we have all the data to back it up, but the real decision is made on that last page, where we're saying, let's reseed, let's not reseed, based on the return on investment.
The producer has those tools right at his fingertip. I mean, we go to the farm as a partnership. We work directly with the producer and with their consultant and with their applicators to help enable them and help them make those decisions. So they're not alone in the industry.
And you can't just go buy this and go out into the field and say, okay, I can fly now. There's a lot of different aspects to being able to do this. If you are going to make any commercial decisions at all with a drone, if you're going to fly at all to look at your field, you have to be licensed by the FAA to do that. I don't care if you're service providers like us, or if you're just a farmer wanting to do this yourself. If you're a farmer wanting to do this yourself, you have to be licensed, have a license to do this, to make these decisions on your farm. That's there's just no disputing that when it comes to that. The FAA has made that very clear, and if you don't, the fines you could get are pretty astronomical. It could shut down a farm.
What types of drones are currently being used in your industry?
There's really 2 types of drones out there that really exist today. What we use here in Kansas is a fixed wing drone, simply because you can always count on the wind to be blowing here in Kansas. So we have to have a drone that can fight the wind. We do use quadcopters as well on days that we can use quadcopters, and quadcopters definitely have their place as well with what they do. But the 2 differences are fixed wing versus quadcopter. There's also another one out there that's actually a fixed wing that can actually take off and land vertically with a kind of a quadcopter configuration. It'll take off and it'll get up to the altitude it's going to fly at, and then it will convert and actually start flying like a fixed wing. So They call those hybrid drones, just for just a short way of saying it. But those do exist. And then you actually have long endurance aircraft too that you can launch and put up in the air, and they'll stay flying for quite a while. And with those, you can actually cover more acres, which someday will be suitable here in Kansas once the regulations allow us to do it.
You can get a system for a couple $100. The first system that we flew on a farm was a $350 platform. It had a CMOS camera. I could take still images, and I shouldn't say still because it was very wavy in the wind, but it was considered a still image. And I was using that system to go up in the air and just take a look. Now, to really do something dangerous, or to be dangerous and capture this kind of data, you need a $15,000, $20,000 system a lot of times, coupled with software that's able to analyze the data. But to get started, to learn how to fly, a few $100 system, or a Christmas present, can do a pretty good job.
This particular drone here, it's a fixed wing. It's a catapult launch drone. So we have a catapult that this launches off of. It'll go fly the quarter that we have set up for it, all autonomously. It's controlled by the GPS, and it's connected to satellites, and it will fly back and forth across the field until it's completed its mission. And all the imagery is saved in the where the camera is, and we get that back, and we process the data after we get it back.
How has the use of drones changed your business?
The nice thing about having the drones is you're able to quantify some of the decisions that you already knew. When it comes time for 2,4-D drift, or let's say you have a big hail event across the field. Well, the days of standing at the field and saying, well, it looks like 30% of the field is damaged are long gone. Now, with what Bill and Sam have to offer, we're able to get in the air and we can quantify and tell you exactly to the acre, to the 1/10 of an acre, what that damage may be. So it's definitely been enabled our business, and I can only see it progressing.
But we had an alfalfa field back in Wisconsin that we were flying. The farmer had thought, maybe I have a misseeding issue. It could have been due to soil temperature or moisture. It could have also been an applicator error. But he said, there's some problem with this field. I can see that the forage isn't coming out of the ground. I'm not getting even emergence, or the seed isn't coming out of the ground and growing like it normally should. We did a flight, and we were able to measure his percentage loss. So we said 26% of that field is loss. Well, at 6 tons on average and $150 per ton, that's $6,700 worth of loss on that farm, not even including the misperforming seed, which just cost him $1,500 that didn't even come out of the ground in the first place. So over $7,000 or $8,000 was lost on that particular scenario, but we were able to measure that out and make sure that he got a payment for it, or at least recoup that cost somehow. And that's what these tools are able to do. They're able to analyze, measure, diagnose issues in the field, and give a true return on investment for a particular grower. So with that being said, if we're able to look at 2 inches on the ground, we're able to get a much more accurate measurement than what we could see from satellite. We looked at the satellite imagery from that alfalfa field, and we were really not able to get an accurate assessment of what was going on. We just said, there's a problem going on. Well, that helps us. We can see a problem, but we need to be able to measure it too and decide, is this a solution where we would replant or reseed that field? Or is it a situation where we let it go because it's not worth the reseeding costs?
For some of these new technologies, what regulations are in place?
For regulations that are involved, for UAVs, the FCC is one that we pay attention to. Ag people also pay attention to that. John Deere uses RTK networks. A lot of people are using radio waves and radio frequencies, so you have to pay attention to the FCC laws, because that affects all of us. The FAA is a big one that would not be a part of most ag operations unless you're aerial applicating. So aerial applicators have to watch FAA laws because they're flying and they're spraying. But we also have to look at the FAA rules, which recently have changed as of August 29. Part 107 came out, allowing us to go out and commercialize the use of UAVs as long as we get our remote pilot certificate. So anyone with a remote pilot certificate like Sam has, with Premier Crop Imaging, he can go out and he can fly this legally and make sure he's following the rules of staying within visual line of sight under 400 feet over unpopulated areas. And when he's out flying, because he's following these rules, he's keeping a safe environment so that when planes are coming by, he can communicate with them, communicate with air traffic control, and make sure we're keeping a safe environment in the skies as well as on the ground.
Are there privacy issues that need to be addressed?
I definitely think there are. I mean, if somebody's hovering a drone over somebody's property, like their house or something, and it's just sitting there, it's a good chance that they're looking on there. But you know, out here in Kansas, where we just have open cropland all over the place, you're not going to run into too many privacy issues out here. That would be something that's more in a city when you're flying a quadcopter around in a neighborhood. And I can understand where people would be upset about that. I would be myself. So there are definitely some privacy issues, but nobody owns the airspace. The airspace is controlled by the FAA, so there's a lot of red tape there still.
Is utilizing the new technology cost effective?
It's adding a level of efficiency to those who have the new enough equipment and have the resources to purchase it. Even relatively small producers are taking advantage of these features, though. You know, the threshold for where you can get into this at, as far as acres, it's an advantage even on small acres. Even though, you know, if you can spread those costs over more, sure, they're going to have an advantage there. But, you know, especially with the section control, you know, you say a smaller producer that maybe actually has many irregular shaped fields, their advantage from section control is going to be bigger than, say, a producer that has larger square fields that don't take quite as much advantage of that technology.
Well, if you hire us to come out and fly for you, and obviously, you know, we're a service company, we definitely recommend using a service company to do this, because we're guys that have already been there, done that. We've been doing it for a while. We know how it works. You got to have everything. You got to have everything in line on a day to fly, because sometimes cloud cover can cause issues. Sometimes there's so many variables, especially here in Kansas. We just know how to manipulate those variables, if you will, in order to get the correct imagery, so we get the correct information. So we definitely recommend doing that. If you have us come out and fly for you, we can definitely reduce your input costs easily by up to 20%, just right off the top. There's cases where it's more, there's cases where it's a little bit less, but we know that we can help you reduce those input costs. And in an economy like today, with grain prices being the way they are today, this tool, should be one of the greatest tools a farmer utilizes to help him figure out where he's going to put those input costs at, because those prices for the input costs haven't changed, and you can't go out and variable rate a field without producing an image off of this particular piece of technology.
Will this new technology eliminate the jobs of a farmer?
We would have a long ways to go before we're taking a producer out of the machine. There's still so many unforeseen things. There's still so many split-second decisions that we can't replace that producer. And really, in a lot of ways, what it does is it frees the producer to actually do and to concentrate on the important parts. You think just of auto track and steering, that the producer used to have to spend most of his time looking forward, making sure that he was driving a straight row, when actually all the important action is going on behind him with the implement. And now he has the ability to focus on what is more important behind him and in the implement that's going on. It actually is freeing for them to do a better job and to make adjustments more quickly, seeing on how the ground is working and catching issues more quickly too. You know, say you have a row that isn't working, or you have a hose that breaks, because of the freedom this allows them, they're going to catch that much faster than they would if you know, 75% of their time is spent trying to drive straight.
Everybody always says, is this going to replace jobs or is this going to create more? Well, in the beginning, we might say that some crop scouts will, quote unquote, lose their jobs, but we're enabling them to provide better data. Well, now the jobs shift to data scientists. The job would shift to people on the ground who need to ground truth that data. So if we're out flying, sure, we might not have somebody who is employed to walk the field, but that person who is employed to walk the field walks directly out where they need to, takes a photograph, makes a measurement, and makes a recommendation. So I think this is a whole new job market. There hasn't been a job for flying UAVs other than in the military in the past. Now we have farmers that are purchasing the systems, we have service providers purchasing the systems and making their own livelihood from flying these systems and providing value from the data that we're getting from them.
How do you see technology impacting the future of agricultural production?
I see it will continue to make gains as far as automation and then taking further advantage of what the equipment can already do. As far as we have the ability to vary the rate of application, instantaneously across fields. And, to make those decisions, it takes good information, it takes good agronomic knowledge, that the technology is there to do it, and now it's the questions of how we implement that technology to keep taking advantage of that. The computers obviously can control so many factors of what we're doing, but to make wise decisions of how we take advantage of that is I think where the gains will be made in the future.
We need to grow more food on less land, and we hear that every day. We're going to have to feed 9 billion people, so we have to double our production on the given ground we have. If we want to bring more land into production, you have to chop down trees, you affect the environment in a negative manner. So we can't really bring more land in production. Land is a finite resource. So we need to be able to grow more on less, or grow more at least on the same to feed more people. So technology is going to enable us to do that. It's going to enable us to grow 300, 400 bushel, take that average from 160 up to 200 and 300 bushel for corn. On soybeans, we have to do the same thing because that's how we keep food safe. That's how we allow for people to improve their production.
We are just on the cusp of this technology becoming mainstream. Years ago, precision agriculture, wasn't even thought of. I would say in today's farming world, precision agriculture is pretty normal, and in the future, precision ag will be very normal. To throw those words out with whatever you're doing, whatever form of precision agriculture you're using. This technology is only going to get better as time progresses. I mean, there's going to be a day when we can actually fly these things beyond our visual line of sight and cover thousands and thousands of acres in one flight. And when that happens, that's when you're really going to be able to see this technology take off and be able to do what it can actually do already. We're just waiting on the FAA to allow us to do that.
Changing to the new technology will naturally make many producers apprehensive. With increased knowledge of data management, reallocating inputs, and using custom equipment, the farm can become a safer environment that produces greater yields for the consumer. We hope you've learned more about the new technologies on this episode of Real Ag. Remember, you can see every program of this series by going to SmokyHillsTV.org. On behalf of the Real Ag crew, I'm Kyle Bauer, and this has been Real Ag.
Production of Real Ag is made possible by
the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by farmers.